This interesting little tidbit today, and it's called the Humphrey Hawkins Act, the H.R. 50th 95th Congress, 1978-1979. And so what I did was I found this little tidbit through Google Scholar, and this is an article. It says the dual mandate has the Fed changed its objective, by Daniel L. Thornton. The Federal Reserve, it said, has a dual mandate of price stability and full employment. While the Fed has mentioned price stability as one of its primary goals, that's an interesting thing to think about, price stability as one of the Fed's goals, but yet the Fed can't actually achieve price stability, so it keeps reflecting inflation year over year. The Fed has mentioned price stability as one of its primary goals. It has been reluctant to mention employment as a separate policy objective, preferring instead to state that maximum employment could best be achieved by achieving price stability. This hesitance ended with the December 2008 policy directive, in which the Federal Open Market Committee, FOMC, noted its objectives were maximum employment and price stability. Operationally, equivalent language first appeared in the FOMC policy in September of 2010 and has appeared in every subsequent statement. This article reviews the FOMC transcripts and biannual statements to Congress to provide some insight into the Fed's historical reluctance to mention employment as an independent policy objective. Actually, the Fed, it sounds like, is violating the Constitution with the Fed job to reach maximum employment. The FOMC documents do not point to a specific reason for the historical reluctance, but they provide a few clues. Perhaps more importantly, they point to two changes that may explain the recent change in language: an increased emphasis on economic stabilization and the shift in emphasis from the growth rate of output to the level of output. The Full Employment and Balanced Growth Act of 1978, more commonly known as the Humphrey Hawkins Act, established price stability and full employment as a national economic policy objectives. The act is said to establish a dual mandate for the Federal Reserve of maximum employment and price stability. Okay, so let's go over here. And we're going to take a look here at, hello, Kale, Jaden Thomas, and Kale. We're talking about the Fed and full employment, the Balanced and Growth Act of 1978, Humphrey Hawkins. This amendment to the employment of the 1946 was signed October 27, 1978, by President Jimmy Carter, establishing new goals for the nation's economic policy makers. The Employment Act of 1946 stated that it is the responsibility of the federal government to create conditions under which there will be afforded useful employment for those able, willing, and seeking work, to promote maximum employment, production, and purchasing power. In 1976 hearing, Senator Hubert Humphrey commented, "It's my judgment that the law has from time to time been conveniently ignored." Meltzer, 2010, 987. He wanted to adopt legislation that would enumerate more explicit employment goals, and if those goals were not met, to have the government provide jobs. The government to provide jobs to achieve the target. But yet the government can't. That's fine. You said you don't care. He wanted to adopt legislation that would enumerate more explicit employment goals if those goals were not met. Are you going to have a job one day, Kale? I know you're saying that you don't care now, but maybe one day you might want to have a job. Or you might need one to live someplace, possibly. Okay, so let's go over here. I'm going to put all of these inside of I'm going to link all of these inside of my video once it's complete. Okay, so 10/13/1978, measures passed, the Senate amended roll call. Full Employment and Balanced Growth Act sets forth the general findings of Congress with respect to unemployment and related economic problems, allows a national employment conference to be held at the District of Columbia within a reasonable period of time after enactment of this act to consider the subject of employment with particular attention to structural employment and the plight of disadvantaged youth and incentives for private sector employers to hire hardcore unemployed. Title I, Establishment of Goals and General Economic Policies. Amends the Employment Act of 1946 to declare and establish as a national goal the fulfillment of the right to full opportunities for useful, paid employment at fair rates of compensation for all individuals able, willing, and seeking to work, declares inflation and trade deficits to be major national problems requiring improved government policies. Right here in the 1978 Humphrey Hawkins, that's what it states in here, declares inflation and trade deficits to be major national problems requiring improved government policies. Hello, Antonio Gant Jr. So let's go. I wish I could highlight that part right there. Let's see. You know what I'm going to do? Okay, this is what I'm going to do by highlighting it. We're going to slide that over there. Declares. Okay, where am I finding that at? It declares inflation. There it is. Declares inflation and trade deficits to be major national problems requiring improved government policies. And so this is 1978. Okay. Okay, this is what we're looking at. And I will link to this in the in the comments and in the video description. I will do both when I've completed my video live stream. So I do think that this is something important to consider because it says declares the purpose of this act to rely principally on the private sector for expansion of economic activity and creation of new jobs and to encourage the adoption of fiscal policies that would establish the share of the gross national product accounted for by federal outlays at the lowest level consistent with national needs and priorities, prohibits the federal government control of production, employment, allocation of resources, or wages and prices except to the extent authorized by federal laws, establishes an order of 4 priorities for job creation: conventional private jobs, private employment through federal assistance to priority programs, conventional public employment programs, and 4 last resort reservoirs of public and private nonprofit employment projects. Nonprofit. Well, not yet. Nonprofit would mean it's just that that's a flat rate. Nonprofit, it means it's a flat rate. Nonprofit doesn't mean begging for money. There's people who are nonprofit, they don't make a profit, or you can have a job, you can get money. Nonprofit employment projects. Amends the Employment Act of 1946 to direct the President in each annual economic report set forth the current and foreseeable trends in the levels of employment, unemployment, production capital formation, real income, federal budget outlays and receipts, productivity, international trade and payments prices, and a review and analysis of domestic and international developments affecting economic trends in the nation. 2, annual numerical short-term goals for 2 years and medium-term goals for 3 succeeding years for employment, unemployment, production, real income, productivity, and prices consistent with achieving as rapidly as feasible goals of full employment. So the Fed chair can never reach full employment. It just sounds to me like the Fed chair possibly is broken. And that's kind of what I come across over here. Yeah, the dual mandate, has the Fed changed its objective? Has the Fed been a failure? There's another article here that I'm looking at Google Scholar, and so you can go into the search engine, just go to Google or any place and type in, you can type in Google Scholar. That's where I'm at looking for this. And you can type in about, what was my search that I put in here? Purpose of Fed. That's all I put in was purpose of Fed. Maybe you have other words different that you want to put in. There's even a article here called Judging the Fed. The statutory obsolescence forced the court to abandon its early jurisprudential commitment to statutory purpose in favor of textualism that permitted the Fed to update its regulatory. This was 2021. That was more recent. Yeah, there's a lot in here. Should the Fed have a financial stability mandate? Lessons from the Fed's first 100 years. Financial stability. So the Fed is just like the federal government. The federal government has never passed an audit. That's what they're always saying. The Fed chair can never reach full employment, ever. I mean, how can you ask the Fed chair to reach full employment when they can't predict what full employment would be or what it would look like? They can never do that. It's the same thing as the federal government. How can you ask them to pass an audit when they're not required to? And so I was listening to this guy. I'm going to call him Wall Street. That's what they are. They're Wall Street, and they're the people who don't want to. They're the ones who always want to talk about gold and silver, buying things with gold and silver. They're delusional. They're delusional beyond delusional. They're the ones with Trump derangement syndrome. A lot of them, I can't say that all of them are out of Hollywood, because I don't think they are. Wall Street is worse than Hollywood. You want to see an entity worse than Hollywood? Wall Street. The Wall Street people, they've deployed they are psyops beyond psyops related to their delusions of grandeur and narcissism. I have never, in my life, well, yes, I have. I was married to it. And he said the same things that these guys are saying, and they talk about. The only thing, actually, he even did tell me at one time when we were married, it was so stupid what he said. And I said, you mean this silverware that has real silver in it, that was grandma's from back in the early 1900s? It has value to it. And he's like, well, yes, it has value to it. This is what he's telling me. He's like, you would be able to sell it if you need it. It's something tangible that you can sell in an emergency. And, I was kind of humoring him. I was just humoring him because of the fact, because it's so ridiculous. So this is coming out of sports, and so they've got all these people repeating the same thing: buy gold, buy silver, buy crypto. It's insider trading and manipulation is what they're doing with all of this, sitting on the internet talking about this. And so, there was something else that I was going to read. Let's see if I can find it, about the Fed chair. And I can't quite find what I was looking for. Maybe was it in here? Let's see where policymakers might also be reluctant because both Friedman 1968 and Phelps 1968 demonstrated the equilibrium unemployment rate cannot be permanently affected by monetary policy. the natural rate hypotheses. Specifically, policymakers may be reluctant to state policy objectives in terms of a variable they cannot affect in the long run. Finally, the equilibrium unemployment rate can change for reasons unrelated to macroeconomy, governmental policies, institutional structure, and a variety of other factors, and hence cannot be affected by central bank monetary policies. Consequently, policymakers' reluctance to set a numerical objective for the unemployment rate is understandable given concerns that they might not be able to achieve it. There it is right there in that article. It's in the article, so this is someone else's opinion. Now, this other guy, Wall Street, there's a lot of Wall Street on YouTube, a lot of Wall Street on the internet. And they're talking about how they have all these articles and things, and they're actually manipulating the search results. And now what he's talking about is taking, I don't know why he's doing this or why he's even suggesting it, but this guy that I was watching, I hate the thought of, I don't want to say who it is to encourage people to do anything. I don't want to promote something that I think is a bad practice related to who is doing it, but this person that's doing it, he looks a little bit like Justin Timberlake. And he thinks he's just a big know-it-all related to cryptocurrency. That's what it sounds to me like. So he sounds like someone who is a bait and switch, because he is subtly promoting. It's just like they kind of are silent a little bit and then they go in for the kill. Some of them are not as aggressive as other ones. The paper extends my previous work by reviewing the transcripts of FOMC meetings for a period of 1978 to 2005 and the congressional testimony of the Fed chair from 1978 through February 2011. My objective is to investigate why policymakers chose not to state their policy objective in terms of employment growth or the employment rate, despite their awareness that the objective was part of their legal mandate. So the Fed chair is legally mandated to reach a full employment, which he can't. The Fed chair can't do that. So they've set policy for the Fed chair that he can't even meet. So by law, he's supposed to reach a full employment growth, which he can't do that. The methodology is that the Meade and Thornton 2011, specifically 27 years of FOMC transcripts and 33 years of congressional testimony by Fed officials were searched electronically to find FOMC discussions of either the dual mandate or employment or the unemployment rate as an objective of policy. The search and 7 key words, employment, dual, mandate, Humphrey, objective, goal, and target. All sections of these documents containing the key words were read to determine whether the discussion regarded the dual mandate or some measures of employment as an objective of policy. The search yielded many discussions of employment that were unrelated to policy goals, but surprisingly few about the dual mandate or employment or unemployment as a policy objective. Thus, despite a keyword search produced, a considerable amount of time was spent reading large sections of the transcript. With the exception of Chairman Alan Greenspan's reaction to Governor Edward Gramlich's suggestion in late 2003 that the policy statements included the phrase maximum sustainable employment, no one explicitly suggested that targeting employment or the unemployment rate might be more than monetary policy was capable of achieving. That's where they're saying that right now, that the Fed chair can never reach full employment rate ever, even though it's mandated by the government, the United States government and Congress, for them to do that. While numerous committee participants suggested some of the requirements of HH were onerous or troubling, none specifically mentioned that the onerous or troubling aspects of the act were. Nevertheless, committee members seemed to understand that the vague references meant without asking for clarification. Okay, well, I think that's probably enough. I don't need to read through all of this because there's a lot of information in there to read, but once my video is done processing the links, I should be able to dump my links in there. In the meantime, I'm going to take my links and I guess I'm going to hold them in a draft in an email because I can't actually get into my live streams that fast once they start processing, because it takes a while for them to process. So it's not like uploading a short or a regular video where I can start putting things in right away. So for some reason the live videos, it takes them a little bit longer, and so yeah, but I think these links are relevant to the video. So anyway, thanks to those of you who watched. Yeah, everybody's putting they don't care here about the yeah, nice that you guys put you don't care about the Fed and all that stuff. And it's like, okay, you guys are Wall Street and you got kids on here probably that are putting this stuff up here. The pushback is always from Wall Street and from legacy media. That's what I'm getting at. That's what I get, It's like, well, so you're getting paid by legacy media as you're driving up inflation for everybody else. That's what's going on. Now, the one thing the other guy said that made sense, I'm going to call him Wall Street. Wall Street he says, well, you're sitting on and stockpiling and hoarding cash, whether you're doing it in crypto or fiat currency or gold and silver. You're hoarding cash is what you're doing. That's what they said. They're hoarding cash. They're sitting on assets even, or sitting on assets. You can't just go in the grocery store and say, and you have a house and say, well, here, I have a house, I have something of value, and just buy groceries with that. You just can't do it. Now, they also want to use mixed wording. This is often, they use mixed wording that says that the government is going into debt. That's a false statement. When the government puts money out, and doesn't expect the money to be returned. So when they pay the military, they don't expect money to come back to them, even though there are some sectors of the government where they do make a profit. Same with Social Security. They don't expect them. They don't expect to make a profit. They don't expect you to pay the money back. But see, that's what they're saying. They're Wall Street is specifically on YouTube. They are saying that the government is going into debt when they pay people. So that's what they're saying. So